minutes to get going.
No, awkward silence.
Silence and smiles.
Yeah.
All right, we are live on Facebook with Jason Pinter and his brand new book, Hideaway. I'm Sara DiVello, your on-air mystery host, and we are so excited for this Memorial Day, a mighty mystery special event. Jason, tell us about your book.
I'm thrilled to be here. I think it's weird to be here at 3 p.m. on Memorial Day. I feel like everybody would ordinarily be out frolicking in the park and things like that. So hopefully everyone is safe and happy. And thanks for joining us on this weirdest Memorial Day ever. So Hideaway is my new book. It's the first book in the Rachel Marin thriller series. It's about a single mother named Rachel Marin who, after a traumatic event, basically shatters her family. She moves to a small town with her 2 young children to start her life over and to escape this tragedy from her past. But at the same time, because she feels sort of let down by the system, she starts to feel like she's the only one who can protect her family, protect her children. So she basically transforms herself into both a protector and something of a criminalist. But when a woman who was kind to her in her new town is found dead, Rachel's instinct kicks in and knows that it was not suicide, it was murder. And so she takes it upon herself to investigate. And in doing so, sort of puts her at odds with the actual detectives investigating and threatens to reveal this kind of secret from her past and put her family and her life in jeopardy. So it's the first book in the series. I'm really thrilled with the response so far. I love this character. I love how readers have reacted, how you reacted to it. And it's great to talk about it.
Yeah, I was super excited to read this. Because obviously I love mystery and thrillers, always have. But I was especially excited to read this with a strong, kick-ass female protagonist. And as I got into the book, which by the way hooked me, and I have spent many nights this past week up until 2 or 3 in the morning. Thanks for that, Jason Pinter. If I'm tired, it's Jason Pinter's fault, everybody.
I'll take full blame for that.
Yeah, exactly. Take full blame and send coffee. But I have stayed up many nights reading this book, just telling myself just one more chapter, which to me is the mark of a successful book, because it's that cliffhanger at the end of every page. I have to keep reading. I have to know what is in that basement. I have to know what is going to happen. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. One thing I also really appreciated was your putting a female protagonist and a diverse cast of characters on the page, representative of what we have in real life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about what my next book was going to be, it was shortly after our first daughter had been born. So I want to say this was almost 3 years ago at this point. And I had the idea of having a female-led series. I'd written a previous series with a male lead. But also, and this is sort of the genesis of where the character came from. But when our oldest daughter was about 6 months old, we used to keep a baby monitor by the side of our bed. Like most parents do, so we can make sure the kid is breathing and alive and still hasn't escaped out the window. But around 6 months, I remember we would keep the baby monitor on all night, and I would sleep pretty well because I'm a guy, I'm the dad, I'm generally a doofus. But I remember my wife would stay up all night watching the monitor. And I remember at about 6 months old, I said to my wife, I said, she's 6 months old, she's healthy, she sleeps through the night, we don't need to keep the monitor on. Of course, like an idiot, I said that. And she said, you'll never know what it's like to grow something inside you and then have it live outside of you and not know if it's safe 24/7. And that really kind of stuck with me, because as much as I love my kids and I'm a hands-on father, I thought there was a bond between a mother and a child that just a father wouldn't know, because they don't carry it. So I love the idea of this character who was a mother, a single mother, who was essentially incredibly vulnerable, both because she, being a single parent is an incredibly difficult thing. And I spoke to a lot of single mothers about this because I wanted to understand the emotions behind it. But I thought that would be really interesting, because I feel like in crime fiction and thrillers, a lot of the main characters tend to be kind of loners. They tend to be, lone wolves. They can go out drinking until 3 a.m. and they can beat up whoever they want, sleep with whoever they want. And I thought it'd be kind of more interesting if you have a character who, she can't do that. She's got to help the kids with the homework. She's got to make breakfast. She can't you know, she can't do all these sort of crazy things most protagonists can do. So how do you balance being, you know, investigating a murder with the fact that, like, you know, your oldest son is struggling with the trauma from years ago when your youngest daughter has homework and they need to be fed, and how do you do? And I thought that was a really interesting sort of premise for a thriller, to have this sort of engaging page turning plot, but with a character that I felt I hadn't really read before, that I thought could kind of speak to readers in a way that maybe hadn't been spoken to before.
Totally. And what I loved about Rachel, and I'm so excited to read the next installments of this Rachel Marin series, is that you do that so well. You balance her as a mother and having those mother worries, and helping with the homework and being worried about is the project getting done and is the homework getting done. But also, she's an ass kicker. She is not afraid to go down the dark alley that I'm afraid to go down,
Yeah.
and take that guy down. Now I need to work out more, so thanks for that. But she is strong, and she is, I don't want to say fearless because she does have fear, but she overcomes that in such a strong and powerful way. So I really, as a woman, appreciated that.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it's so cool that you did that as a guy.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Is that you know, she's not fearless, and I think the reason that she becomes something of an ass kicker and does all this stuff is because she's terrified. You know, she saw what could happen when she's not vigilant, and so everything that she does, from changing her mind to changing her body to being this protector, it's not because she wakes up every morning thinking I'm going to kick ass. It's because she thinks I know what's around that dark corner and I need to be prepared for it. And so she's prepared herself, and then that's really it.
Exactly. And I also want to say, I think it's really cool that you have, beyond this single mother lead character, you also have a diverse cast of characters for the others. You have Leslie, who is a kick-ass detective, woman of color, gay. You have many other diverse characters, which I think is really cool. This book on the page looks like what life out there looks like, and not everybody does that. And so I think it's really great of you that you did. Tell us about that.
So yeah, I mean, it was important to me that the book to some extent reflected life a little bit. You know, Leslie, essentially there's sort of three main characters in the book. Rachel is the protagonist, but then there are the two detectives who she is both kind of at odds with, but also sort of has a very tenuous working relationship with. And that's John Serrano and Leslie Talley. And John Serrano, he has a very tragic backstory, and he sort of gravitates towards Rachel because of that, which I don't want to give away too much. But Leslie Talley is Serrano's partner, and she's a terrific detective, and she happens to be a Black detective. She happens to be a gay detective. But I both wanted the book to feel diverse like the way our world was, but I also didn't want it to be a kind of thing where I'm shining a spotlight to say, look how diverse my cast is. It's just, this is who people are. Leslie Talley happens to be Black. She happens to be gay. She's married. And this is just who she is. I didn't want to sort of feel like I was awarding myself any medals for diversity. I just wanted the book to feel like it accurately reflected our society a little bit. And I think there's been a late but much needed push over the last couple of years, especially in the crime fiction genre, which I think has been very dominated by a certain gender and a certain race to some extent. To both reflect that in the authors who are writing them, but also the worlds that they're writing in. Because when you walk outside, you're not going to see, not everyone's going to look the same. Everyone's going to have a different backstory. Everyone's going to have different race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality. And I think that to accurately reflect our society, it's important for authors to, at the very least, try to have characters that reflect that. But I also wanted to make sure that the characters were, like I said, weren't just sort of like, they weren't cookie cutter, and it didn't feel like I was shining a spotlight on them just to sort of feel good about myself, that these were real people, and they had real concerns, and they felt like human beings.
Exactly. And it felt effortless. It just was by the way. There wasn't a spotlight on any particular aspect of any of these characters. This is who they were. And it felt, to me as a reader, effortless, and inclusive. So I think that's good. And I love seeing that. Jason, what's your favorite scene in this book?
Favorite scene in the book? I would say there are sort of two scenes in the book that so, you know, we talk about Rachel as an ass kicker, and she's a bit of an ass kicker in these scenes. And there's one scene towards the beginning where to me, that sort of exemplifies who she is, both as a mother and as sort of a bit of an ass kicker. And it's that she's literally on her way home from work, because she's always exhausted, always busy. She's late to relieve her sitter who's watching her 2 kids, and she's late for the sitter and she's running home, and all of a sudden is accosted on the street by a random guy who basically wants to do some terrible things. And this is one of the situations where she's trained herself for situations like this, and she takes it upon herself to teach the guy a lesson. But what I also sort of love about it is that she doesn't teach him a lesson. She maybe goes a little too far. You could certainly argue that he had it coming, and that's certainly possible. But one of the things that I think you even raised is that, she's not flawless. There's a bit of an obsessive quality to her, and that sometimes she doesn't always know when to pull back. And so I love the scene because it shows Rachel's priorities as a mother. It shows what she's capable of as a bit of a fighter, but it also shows that she's got a little bit of, maybe she hasn't quite gotten over some of her trauma too, and can sometimes harness it in ways that are not necessarily healthy for her. And that's explored both in this book and the future books, that I didn't want her to sort of just be like this total badass with no remorse and no feelings, that there's a reason she's like this. And I think we sort of get a glimpse of it in that early scene.
Yeah, and I think you do that really well. And that scene early on that you're talking about, where she's rushing home and something happens, is also one of my favorite scenes in the book. Because I think that really does capture everything about her.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see this guy get his comeuppance, and he completely underestimates her, and he thinks he's like, oh, there's this, this little girl, and she's running home from work, and she's gonna be a pushover. But there's one line I think that I love where she basically says, like, she says to him, like, trust me, you don't want to do this. And he sort of looks at her like, what? Like, what do you mean I don't want to do this? And it's because it's essentially she's giving him an out. Did you ever see Captain America, Winter Soldier, the Marvel movie? There's a great.
I think I've seen that. I've seen a lot. My husband is a huge Marvel fan, a huge superhero fan. So I don't know if that's one of the ones that he persuaded me to watch, or that's one of the ones I. There's a great
scene where in that movie where Captain America is basically in an elevator, and all of a sudden he's surrounded by like 20 guys who all want to beat him up, and he knows they want to beat him up. But before they start fighting, he basically says to them, "Before we get started, does anybody want to get off?" And basically Rachel saying to this guy, like, before we get started, like, this is your chance to back away. And he's too stupid to realize she's giving him an out, so she has to teach him a lesson.
Exactly. And I like to see that. I think we need more of that in our culture, more of that in our society, where, we are seeing women as more empowered, fear-inducing creatures, where maybe you want to think twice.
And it's funny because, like, if you think about it, if you read that chapter, the guy who accosts her is like, he's a big guy. He's like, 6'3", 250 pounds, like a brick wall. He's the kind of guy you wouldn't want to run into in a dark alley. But Rachel is way more terrifying than he is.
Exactly. And that's what the reason that I really liked that scene is, because starting to change the cultural script of women as victims and women as powerless is an important shift, and I'm excited to see that happening.
Yeah, and part of it, when she sort of teaches him a lesson, she says, like, I don't, the next woman you run into might not be me. She might not be trained like I am. She might not be as strong as I am. So I'm going to make sure that you don't do this ever again.
Yeah, exactly. In a powerful way.
Yeah.
Yes. And everybody needs to read that scene because it is very good.
And if you can read that scene and put the book down, then I've not done my job well.
I'm going to say that nobody is going to be able to read that scene and put that book down. So Jason, tell us about your path to publication. Were you hacking your way through a jungle? Were you cruising along on a superhighway? This is your 9th book, correct?
I'm trying to think. So I wrote 5 books, seventh adult book. So I've written 7 for adults and then 2 children's books. So 9th overall, seventh book for adults. So I wrote 5 books in my Henry Parker series, which was, a male protagonist and newspaper reporter. 1 standalone, which is sort of like a bit of a political thriller called The Castle. And then Hideaway, which is the first Rachel Marin book. So 7 for adults and 2 for kids. With this book, it was an interesting situation because I finished the Henry Parker series a while ago. I'd put my writing on hold a little bit to start Polis Books, which is an independent press that I founded in 2013. So I had to put my career on hold essentially to start the company, make sure the trains are running on time. There's only so much time in the day. And then I had 2 kids basically back to back. And during that time, I had written The Castle. And I had a bit of a falling out with my agent at that point. Was very fortunate to find another agent fairly quickly who responded to this book. Funny story. We actually went to college together, but didn't know each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so landed a new agent fairly quickly. She went out on submission, and I want to say we sold this within maybe a month or so, maybe a little less. So somewhere between 3 to 5 weeks.
Wow.
And Tom, it was fairly quick. I want to say, it's funny. I think I finished my final draft of the book in April, signed with my agent in May, and I think we sold the book in June. So it was, as far as publication goes, it was fairly quickly. We sold it to Thomas Mercer, which is sort of like the thriller crime fiction imprint at Amazon. And, I'd been a fan of what they were doing for a long time. I knew a lot of authors who had published with them that were thrilled. And just what I saw with their model, how they were able to reach readers, really appealed to me. So it was weird. I think it was in the back of my mind. There was part of me sort of hoping they would like it, and they did, thankfully. So it worked out pretty well. But it's funny enough because I think we agreed to the deal in June of 2018, but then the book didn't actually come out until March 1st, 2020. So it was like almost a 2-year wait between agreeing to the deal and the book actually coming out, which was, interminable. It was a long time between agreeing to the deal and then the book actually coming out. So by the time the book came out, I was like, finally, after all this time.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause 3 months from changing agents to signing with the agent, to finishing the book, changing agents, signing with the agent.
Yeah.
Selling the book to Thomas Mercer, that is a whirlwind.
That happened pretty quickly. And then it was a 21-month wait between agreeing to the deal to the book actually coming out. So it's sort of like, as is everything in publishing, it's hurry up and wait.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then, so now you're working on your next Rachel book, or you've already completed your next Rachel book. Now you're working on Rachel number 3.
So I just handed in last week or 2 weeks ago the copy edits for book 2. That will be out in January 2021. So I just turned in the copy edits. I think I see the proof pages at some point in the next couple of weeks. And that's, we're sort of in the end game for that. And for Rachel Marin number 2. It's weird because everyone says what do you incorporate the coronavirus into your books now? And I think I finished this book in the draft I turned into my editor was in last December. So I essentially finished this book for all intents and purposes well before the coronavirus really started affecting the US. And then we've just been doing copy edits and proofs. So this book was done before the coronavirus really hit here. As far as the next book, I don't really know yet. So I'm currently putting together a bit of an outline for what I hope is Rachel Marin number 3. I love this character. I certainly have an idea of where I want book 3 to go. And then it's just, hopefully enough people read the books and buy the books and talk up the books that, they'll want to continue on, because I love the character and I love, writing her, and I want to see how Rachel grows or doesn't grow, how the other characters grow, new characters I want to incorporate. And that's one of the fun things about a series, that you sort of create this world that you can just sort of just keep growing it as much as your imagination lets you.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to happen because all of these characters are very interesting. And I personally want to know where they're going.
Your lips to the gods of publishing's ears. I hope you're right.
Exactly. I'm always right, Jason. This is the first thing you need to know about me.
This is good. I like this. You're always right. I love the confidence. Thank you.
Yes. So tell us, what is some of the best writing advice you've ever gotten, and what is some of the worst writing advice that you've ever gotten? What would you like to share?
I would say the best is the first draft you write with your heart, the second draft you write with your head, which I think might have been in a movie, but I think that's really, really true. A lot of people ask when I write a book, do I edit as I go? And the truth is I don't. I always need to get that first draft out before I edit a word of it. So just, I don't edit it. So from page 1 to page 350 or whatever it is, I don't go back, I don't revise. Maybe if I see a typo, I'll fix it. But the reason being that when I finish the book and then I go back to edit, I know how the story plays out. So if I need to make a change in chapter 2, that could affect chapter 37. So I need to know how the story plays out, so that if I make a change early in the book, I know, if I disconnect this thread, here's where I'm gonna have to connect and move all these other ones, sort of make sure all the pieces fit together. So, the first draft is really sort of everything in your gut just kind of pours out, just let onto the page. And the second is when you go back and like make sure all the threads are connected, make sure the wiring works, make sure the electricity is flowing, make sure these, characters, what they're doing and saying makes sense. Make sure that, there are times when like, I'll have a character wake up on Monday morning, then they have lunch and all of a sudden it's Tuesday, then they go out for drinks and some reason it's the previous Saturday and like things like that where you read like, wait, that was dumb with me. As far as the worst advice, write what you know. I think though the worst advice, like a lot of people say, oh, you have to write what you know. And listen, I have never been a single mother of 2 young children who beats the crap out of people. And barring something weird happening, I probably never will be. So, I grew up on Stephen King. I grew up on big epic fantasy novels. I was a huge Terry Brooks fan, and they write, demonic clowns and aliens, So on the flip side, I think when people say write what you know, there should be an emotional honesty to it. And even though I've never been a single mother, I think I understood some of the vulnerabilities and hardships and stresses and anxieties of a parent. And now those stress and anxieties are different between a mother and father. So what I try to do is understand it from the woman's perspective, which is why I talk to other mothers. I talk to my wife, so that I could use whatever emotional knowledge I have about the anxieties of parenting, but then sort of expand on that to make sure I got it right from the other perspective too. So, to me, the emotions are the most important part of the book, because like anybody can hold a gun, anybody can hold a flashlight. Is the reader going to care about the person behind it holding it? So that's the emotional honesty to me that I think I'm not going to be my characters necessarily. Lead child is not Jack Reacher, but he's able to understand the psychology. And I think that's when people say, right, I think that's it more literally.
I like that idea of emotional honesty, because I think that as soon as you said that, it resonated. I felt the truth of that, where there is that moment of connection, even though these are fictional characters, where it feels, you can tell when it's true, you can tell when it's honest, and that resonates somehow through the page and through the words. So that makes sense. And I like that is sort of what you're writing toward. That makes sense. And especially because you can, as you said, you're not a single mother. You probably won't be. And yet you wrote this emotionally honest.
I tried really hard to be a single mother during the writing of this, and it wouldn't take. So I did my best.
What about the title, Hideaway? Did it arrive as a strike of genius, or was this number 99?
It was not the original title. The original title for the book was called The Broken Woman, actually. And that's the title it sold on. That's the title my agent signed it, and that's the title that Thomas and Mercer signed it as. And the reason being that I felt it was both a dual title in the sense that Rachel Marin has been broken in the past, how she's been broken. And the murder that sort of ignites the investigative part of the story is a woman who's found dead at the base of a bridge, and suicide. Rachel thinks it's a murder, so she's broken. She's more broken literally. Rachel's more broken figuratively. So I like the idea of this sort of dual sense of the title, sort of these two women sort of being broken, one mentally, one physically. But also there's this great Hemingway quote called, and I want to try to recite it off the top of my head, but many people are broken, some are stronger in the broken places. And I apologize if I butchered that, but I love that quote so much, and that exemplifies Rachel to me, because she has been broken, but she built herself back up stronger than ever before. And so I love that. I almost cursed right there. I was about to say I effing love that quote. And I actually wanted to use it as the epigraph, but the Hemingway Society wanted like all sorts of different monies for it. And I was like, I don't want to bother with that. So I can just say I love the quote without it actually being the epigraph.
I actually love the quote that you start with here, which is a Gabriel Garcia Marquez quote, which is, everyone has 3 lives, a public life, a private life, and a secret life. And that was sort of immediately, as soon as I read that, I knew I was going to love this book, because I think we're all sort of intrigued, and I know I am, by this idea of people having secret lives, and who are they really versus who are they pretending to be. And I love a good challenge. So I want to get to the bottom of that. So
And for
did you
Rachel,
know?
she has her public life as Rachel Marin, and she's employed. She has a couple friends, maybe. That's the sort of the face she puts on in public. She has a private life, which is when she's at home or when she's with her children. But even her children don't know the real truth about her, and that's her secret life. And there's really nobody who knows that side of Rachel except her. And that's sort of one of the conflicts throughout the book, is that will Rachel's secret life be revealed to anybody? And so I love that quote. And I really thought that since I couldn't use the Hemingway quote, I thought that was a good alternative.
I don't know. I really loved that quote, because I think we all have parts of ourselves that we present to the world and parts of ourselves that we don't feel great about. And sort of that, the tension between those, and feeling like, you have to, it's such an interesting, such a juicy
Yeah.
premise to start with.
Yeah. So Hideaway basically what happened was my publisher felt that, and they weren't wrong, that the title of The Broken Woman sort of presents Rachel as a little bit more of a victim than she necessarily is. So, and it also just in sort of like type treatment, it didn't quite work. So we batted around, like my agent, my editor, and I batted around a whole bunch of different ideas, and Hideaway was the one that sort of stood out a little bit. But it's sort of funny, you can throw around like 100 titles, and eventually they all start to sound terrible, even if there are a couple good ones in there. It's just like, enough already, just pick one. But we all hit on Hideaway, both how it sort of was Rachel's sort of flight from her old life. It worked well on the cover design. The second book is called A Stranger at the Door, and that's actually the original title. So that title has not been changed.
And it's actually perfect that you just answered that, because we have a question from the audience, why the title change, and I think you just answered that really, really well. And did you, as soon as you saw Hideaway, did you know that was it, or you were kind of like,
Hideaway, I want to say was one of like maybe 10 or 12 different titles we were considering, and then we were sort of trying to figure out like which titles have been used before. Were any titles like a prominent books? Were any of them like incorrect in the way they didn't present the book well? Also because it's publishing, you want to make sure it looks good on a cover. So there were some titles that were too long and too wordy. And this one was a great mix of both. It conveyed the sense of the story, and that Rachel Marin was hiding and hiding away, had left her old life, but it also worked really well for cover design too. And I absolutely love the cover design that Thomas Immersion did for this book. Is absolutely, like, what you see on the cover right now went through so many different iterations, and the level of depth and colorization they did it on, it was really it was phenomenal. I was like weirdly not that didn't think they were professional, but I was shocked by the level of detail they put into the cover. It was really special. I love it.
Oh, that's so good to know. Thank you. And Jason, tell us about your writing practice. Do you rise with the sun? Do you work by moonlight? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Do the words flow easily, or are you banging your head on that desk, scrabbling for every word? Tell us what your practice looks like.
So I rise when our daughter starts crying in the morning. That is when I rise. There's literally nothing glamorous or glorious about it. We lie in bed, and our older daughter was always a good sleeper, thankfully. So she would sleep from go to bed at 12 hours, 6:30 to 6:30. Our younger daughter has never been a late sleeper. She's up every day by 5:30 at the latest. There are some days when she's up at 4:45. So we are up with her. She is our rooster. So
4:45.
yeah, there's some 4:45 days in there, and then it's just like, and not only that, but our youngest is basically like a demon. She just, when she's up at 4:45, she's not up and cuddly and sweet. She's up and she's like doing laps around the apartment. She wants to go outside. So I'm basically from 4:45 just chasing her around the house. So, writing, especially nowadays, it's tough. I write when I can. And I love to say, I write when the muse descends from up on high and perches on my shoulder and says, Jason, here's a spark of genius. Begin to write your story now. It's like, no, it's literally, okay, the kids are in bed. Now's the time to write. Or they're taking a nap. There's a half an hour. They're both asleep right now. Or, so that's basically right. I write when I have time. And it's, it was a couple months ago, I was in an office 9 to 5, and we had a nanny, and my wife worked full time, and I could get work done there. But now it's tough. It's tough because we have 2 young children. older daughter will be 3 in a month. Our younger daughter is 18 months. So we have 2 toddlers who are, not really self-sufficient. They can't feed themselves. They're not fully potty trained. So I write when I can, and a lot of times it's at night now when the kids go to bed. Both kids are usually in bed by 8. We then spend another half an hour to an hour just cleaning the house and getting ready for the next day, and then it's like I write until I pass out. Way back in the day, I think before I had kids, even before I was married, my favorite time of the day to write was late at night, like 10 p.m. start, like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And like you turn the lights out, maybe have a drink, and like the world is turned off and you can concentrate. And I love that. It's very hard nowadays to sort of get into an uninterrupted flow just because of the kids and because of obviously the virus situation. So it's really just write when you can, because if you let that half an hour slip, you're not going to get it back.
Yeah. And I think the pandemic is causing a lot of distraction and anxiety, and it's very hard to focus with the global pandemic outside. So it's testing all of us in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I mean, it's, everyone is, we have 2 young kids, and it's hard with no childcare, not being unable to take them to parks or playgrounds or play dates. But at the same time, it's different for everybody. There are people who are living alone and basically haven't been able to leave their apartment in 2 or 3 months. And, it's not, they're not waking up with a screaming child every morning, but like there's a mental difficulty there that I can't understand of loneliness and uncertainty. Yeah. And I know a lot of people who are writers who are living alone and like they're on deadline right now. And like they haven't seen their parents in 2 months, and they haven't seen friends in 2 months. And God knows what things are going to be like when the world opens up. And it affects everybody differently. And even though there's some days I think like this is really, really hard, thankfully, like we're all healthy. Nobody's gotten sick. Our families are healthy. None of our immediate family has gotten ill. So as hard as it is some days, we have it a lot better than a lot of other people. And sort of like, we always try to keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an interesting practice of balancing gratitude, with, man, I really miss my old life. And it's such an interesting and challenging time right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, God, like I miss like sending the kids off to school and then being like, okay, they're good for now. Like I hope selfishly, like both, for the kids, because I want them to grow up relatively normal, but like I want schools to be open up in the fall, presuming it's safe, because like both for their education, but also like I need to get away from them sometimes. I want some time to write and to work, because it's hard as hell to do when they're both here and both in need of constant attention and affection. So, there are definitely times I feel selfish saying things like that, but I also think it's weird if you don't think things like that, because we're all just human and we all just like, sometimes, you need a little time to yourself. I am an extroverted introvert. And one of the hardest things about the situation is having literally no time to myself whatsoever, having no time to turn off or zone out or even like read for pleasure very much. So it's a new normal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also an extroverted introvert, so it is unique. It's a uniquely challenging time, and again, we don't have a blueprint for this, because none of this has never happened in any of our lifetimes. So we're all trying to, blindly figure our way out of this and figure our way through this.
And we have no idea what's going to happen, on the other side of it. There's a very weird timing for like my book came out on March 1st. And I did a couple of events in New York City and New Jersey, which were great. Then I went on a book tour, and my book tour got canceled literally halfway through the book tour. I flew out to San Diego for a conference, and the conference literally got canceled the day it started. So I essentially flew out to San Diego for a turkey club and a beer. And then I was going to have stops in Houston and Austin and Seattle. I was going to visit my sister in Seattle, and that all got nuked literally while I was on the West Coast. And I remember the airport coming back. I had to change my flight to come back. And it was like the strangest plane ride I've ever taken, because the airport was almost empty. And there were like, maybe 10 people on my flight. It was just like, you felt like you were in like one of those pandemic movies where like, a virus has wiped out 95% of the population. It's like, okay, there's 5 people on my flight. And, we're going to get into an adventure or something.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking nervously around for Will Smith and his dog.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Well, Jason, I am so enjoying talking to you. I could just talk to you forever, but we're running out of time. So let's jump into the lightning round. Okay. Do you see this as a Netflix series or on the big screen?
I think a series. And I actually have a film agent who I think is a film and TV agent who's shopping this as we speak. And I think the thing was, it would work well, but a little bit better as a series. So we sort of like draw out the characters and see how the other books played into it. So hey, I think not good.
I'm knocking. Who do you see as the lead? Who's your kick-ass lead?
So anybody who wants to do it, if they're great, wonderful. But there's this one actress, her name is Kate Siegel, and there's this awesome horror movie called Hush, where she plays a woman who's deaf and mute, and she has to fend off a guy who's invading her house, even though she can't hear, she can't speak. And I love that movie. I loved her. She was also in The Haunting of Hill House. But there's this perfect combination of strength and vulnerability in that character. And for some reason, just her acting mesmerized me. So there's been a little bit of a part of me that's like, in a perfect, I think she's around the same age. She's got this perfect combination of vulnerability and fragility and strength. So I think she would kick ass at it. That said, if somebody else, not her, wanted to do it, I'm not going to say no. That was not lightning.
She sounds absolutely perfect.
If you haven't seen Hush, go see it. It's an awesome movie.
Okay, perfect. I am going to go see it now. Jason, what's your weirdest writing ritual?
Weirdest writing ritual.
Tell us your weirdest.
I would say writing late at night was definitely kind of weird. Like starting at 10 a.m. And I was working full time too. So it'd be like I was writing until 2 a.m., sleeping for 4 hours and getting up for work. But like, I love silence. I love just like putting on headphones, listening to music, maybe having a drink. That is like not weird at all. It's like, I like to write in quiet, which is what everybody does. I like to have a drink, which is not weird at all. I don't know if I have any like really weird writing things. Like I stand in my head or have to, dress in like, like crushed velvet. I don't know. I don't have any super, I wish now I did. I feel like I'm super boring because I don't like write on a unicycle. I promise
your apartment.
Next time we talk, I'll have some like super weird, crazy writing story. But as right now, it's like I like to write late at night and just when it's dark out, and that's that's not that exciting.
That's weird enough. I like it. I also like to write at night. But we will look forward to hearing about your crushed velvet unicycle writing ways when we talk to you.
I'll put it in an iPad or something.
Oh my gosh. Well, Jason, it has been so great talking to you. Thank you for spending time with us here on Memorial Day for our Mighty Mystery event. Again, loved Hideaway. Can't wait to hear more from Rachel Marin and this series. Thank you so much for joining us on A Mighty Blaze. It's been great to have you. And everybody go get the book. We are linking to it with our very special partnership with bookshop.org so you can support indie bookstores who need us to support them and get Jason's book. It is a win-win-win-win-win. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you again soon.
That is a lot of wins. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Love indie bookstores. I actually just had my first book from bookshop.org arrive last week. So thank you for having me, and hope everyone loves the book.
Yay, thank you so much, Jason.